Silently passing through the inky void of space, a vessel was hurriedly making its way towards its destination. The craft was sleek, designed and built by hands not of this world. Aboard, one of the occupants knelt before its elders. It was time. It gathered its arsenal in a methodical, almost ceremonial fashion. Its spear latched onto its back with its survival gear, a medikit containing surgical equipment and specialized serums. It donned its gauntlets, then reached for the final piece, its mask that had slipped over its face. Ready for its task, the creature boarded a smaller scout ship, which was jettisoned and began to descend toward the planet below, a world known as Earth. On the surface of the planet itself, a technician was sitting at his desk, bored, staring at readouts from satellites and the endless sweeping of a radar scanning the skies above for any signs of disturbance. For a moment, as the scout craft passed through the atmosphere, something happened that broke the technician out of his boredom. There was a blip on the radar, the tiny detection of an unknown signal, that of an object traveling on a direct course through the sky. Just as the technician started to take notice, the approaching ship activated a stealth mechanism, reflecting all light away from it in order to render it almost invisible, while simultaneously becoming undetectable to radar. The blip vanished from the screen and didn't reappear. The technician shrugged, thinking it was probably nothing but an equipment glitch. Besides, the SCP Foundation didn't pay him enough to follow up on every tiny blip. A few hours later, and several continents away, a mobile task force was on an assignment. The oppressive heat and humidity of the Lakandan jungle was bearing down on them, especially in their combat gear. The operatives were all feeling unbearably hot. The Foundation researchers overseeing the MTF's mission via satellite didn't have to contend with the elements in the comfort of their air-conditioned command center. But little did they or their boots on the ground know, there was something else visiting the rainforest too. It had been stalking the squad for a few miles now, and not one of them had noticed, just as the creature planned. A trio of red laser beams cast 3 distinct dots over one of the MTF operatives' chest. Suddenly, a streak of energy shot through the air, crackling as it struck the agent, tearing through his chest and killing him on the spot. Instinctively, the remaining troops turned and opened fire at the treetop where the blast had come from, spraying a volley of bullets, enough to start shredding the wood of the tree, splinters and bark raining down. They hit nothing. There was no sign of whoever or whatever had fired that shot and killed their teammate. From behind them, a pair of discs with a row of long fan-like blades around their edge flew through the air. There was so much force behind the arm that threw them that the pair of shuriken lifted 2 of the remaining MTF soldiers off their feet and impaled them to the trunks of nearby trees. The last remaining Foundation operative looked at the bodies of his dead squad mates in horror before turning and fleeing. But just as he ran for his life, something caught him. It was transparent, cloaked, and near impossible to see, but it had plunged a pair of blades into the MTF trooper's chest, lifting him off his feet with ease as he screamed in pain. An invisible, leathery-skinned hand reached for his throat and twisted, and in an instant, with a sickening crack, the man was silent and dropped limply to the floor. From the command center, watching in awe as this imperceptible monster tore through 4 of their finest operatives with ease, a pair of researchers turned to look at each other. The expressions they both wore were faces of sheer disbelief. They both had heard stories, instantly recognizing the destructive behavior, but never thought they'd see, or not see, it carried out for real. "We still don't have a name for them, do we?" Researcher Hall asked as the pair of them walked briskly down the corridor. Negative," replied his counterpart, Researcher D. Ligirio. "But the files we acquired from military intelligence suggest they've been coming to Earth for decades, centuries even. The earliest known encounter took place in the 1700s. Can we negotiate with this one at all?" Hall asked, fully expecting the answer. "I don't think they respond well to that kind of engagement," De Ligirio said. "They seem to come to Earth with one singular purpose, to hunt. For sport? Well, it seems so." What about their capabilities?" the senior researcher pressed. "Their technology is pretty advanced, even compared to some of the things we've seen," the other explained. "On top of that, they're fast, strong, and completely ruthless, pretty much an apex predator. According to intel, the instances of these creatures that have previously visited Earth have displayed a sort of tribal nature. Care to elaborate?" Hal probed. Based on the files, their hunt seemed partially recreational, but also like some kind of ritual to prove themselves as capable or to challenge themselves. That gives me an idea, the researcher replied. Contact Containment Area 25B. If we play this right, we can bag one of these creatures and bring it in for testing. Time seemed to race by as Hall and DeLigerio were bundled aboard a transport and taken directly to Containment Area 25B, a facility built by the Foundation specifically to house a particularly dangerous anomaly. Within the hour, the two researchers were standing facing a huge stone cube, its dark surface sporting a number of symbols engraved into it. Growing impatient, knowing their window of opportunity was rapidly closing, Hall turned to one of the Foundation personnel stationed within the primary containment zone around SCP-076. "Play it again," he instructed. "Wake him up." Hitting a button, a recorded message began to play over the facility's loudspeakers. It had been translated into an ancient Sumerian dialect that the entity within the stone cube had historically shown a preference for. "Come on out," the message stated. "We know you don't think any of us are worth your time, but we remember Omega-7. You agreed to work with us before, even though you don't think we present enough of a challenge to you. But we may have found something that will. An adversary that you could have the privilege of besting in combat." There was a brief moment of silence before the stone began to rumble. The security personnel on site tensed up, gripping their weapons shakily, nervous hands. Slowly, the circular lock on the side of the cube began twisting, the door it kept sealed beginning to open.
"Are you sure we can do this, Hal?"
asked DeLigerio.
"If SCP-076 isn't willing to cooperate, this could go south real quickly. And God forbid, what if somebody found out what we're having him do?"
Hall didn't answer, instead watching as the door to the cube finally opened, and a lean man in his late 20s stepped out. His gray eyes stared out of a mess of jet black hair, his body adorned with tattoos of arcane runes and occult imagery, the sneering faces of demons over his olive skin. As the guards around him nervously raised their weapons at the ready, SCP-076-2 casually strode up to Researcher Hall until the two were inches away from each other.
"Where?"
Abel asked. Fitting him with a communications earpiece and having him board a transport, Abel was sent directly towards the last known coordinates of the now deceased MTF, deep in the heart of the Lakandan jungle. Sat atop a tree as the aircraft made its approach, the creature had lowered its cloaking device, certain it was alone as it polished a skull it had collected from one of the ill-fated operatives. The predator was a member of a species known as the Yautja, one of the few details about its race that DeLigerio's files hadn't mentioned. Everything else was accurate though. It was indeed a hunter, here to claim trophies as proof of its skill. These trophies happened to be the skulls and spines of whatever it killed. Hearing the sound of an incoming vehicle, the predator instinctively reached for a control on its left wrist gauntlet. Its cloaking device reactivated, bending the light away from itself to render the alien hunter nearly invisible. Through the lenses of its biomask, the predator watched the craft pass overhead, and the shape of a single humanoid heat signature dropping from it and landing in the rainforest. Trekking through the lush vegetation, Abel walked towards the location he had been given. It always irked the immortal barbarian when the Foundation attempted to use him to perform their menial dirty work. To Abel, such tasks were beneath him, but he had been promised a fight with a worthy adversary, and that was the only reason he had agreed to undertake this mission. Looking around as he reached a clearing, there was no sign of the MTF agents, until, that is, Abel craned his neck upwards and found them. Something had meticulously gathered up the bodies and hung them from the branches by their legs. It felt distinctly like a warning, as well as a taunting gloat. Every indicator pointed to this being the action of a creature that was marking its newfound territory. With a wave of his hand, Abel pulled a black-edged sword out of a pocket dimension holding his weapons, and held the blade at the ready. Looking down, he saw 3 points of red light had appeared on his bare chest. Just as Abel caught sight of the treetops where the lasers were coming from, a bolt of high-energy plasma was fired towards him. Within the same split second, he hurled his sword in the direction of his invisible enemy. The blast struck him and knocked him down, searing his flesh. Not that Abel could feel pain. At the same time, his sword spun through the air and cleaved through the branch where the predator had been perched, causing the creature to drop to the jungle floor with a thud. As the Yautja stood up, it noticed its gauntlet was sparking, having sustained damage in the fall. Now its cloaking device was flickering on and off. The predator knew it would need to repair its equipment, but first and foremost needed to collect a trophy from its latest kill. The creature strode towards where Abel was laying. A scorch mark left by the plasma caster burned into his flesh. Its cloaking device still malfunctioning, the hunter reached down to claim its prize. Abel's eyes suddenly snapped open and caught the creature by surprise. Reeling his leg back, he delivered a sharp kick that sent the predator hurling backwards, despite it being well over 7 feet tall and 520 pounds of armor and alien muscle. Abel hurriedly stood back up, facing off against the alien warrior as it too drew itself to full height. The gauntlet on its left wrist continued to spit sparks until the predator reached a clawed digit over and pressed a control. With an electronic beep, its cloak deactivated fully, and the hunter was revealed. It was tall, standing on 2 legs like a man. It seemed lithe and agile, but clearly almost as strong as Abel himself, judging by how muscular it was. Long appendages resembling locks of hair protruded from its head. Behind a metal faceplate, a mask covered the true face of the creature below. A clicking, chittering noise emanated from beneath the predator's biomask as it reached for a sash that went across its front and produced a pair of small metal circles. Abel flexed his shoulders and ran at the creature. The predator hurled both its discs at Abel, curved blades extending from both of them as they spun through the air. Abel ducked out of the path of one shuriken, narrowly dodging the second as he charged the alien hunter. Reaching for its back, the predator produced the long, ornate handle of its combi stick. Both ends of its telescopic spear extended, and the hunter began racing forward to clash head-on with its newfound prey. It plunged the spear right through Abel with all its strength, lifting the barbarian off his feet on the end of its weapon. Out of nowhere, SCP-076 produced another of his swords, the predator turning to look in confusion at the weapon that had seemingly just appeared in the hand of what it had taken for an ordinary human. Catching the off-world game hunter by surprise, Abel swept the sword through the air, cleaving the creature's spear in 2, causing him to drop back to the ground, landing on his feet. Following it with a second swift swing of his blade, Abel brought the weapon down on a slash that cut across the creature's chest. It sliced through the thick reptilian hide of the predator, leaving a streak of fluorescent green blood oozing from its torso. The creature roared in pain. It sounded like a call of a lion echoing through the trees. In retaliation, the predator extended a pair of blades contained in its right gauntlet and swiped them at Abel. The wrist blades narrowly missed his face as he dodged an incoming attack, only to be caught by the creature's other hand. It gripped his head and plunged downwards, knocking Abel over and sending him face first into the rainforest floor. Reaching for his cloaking device control, the predator disappeared, retreating into the jungle to tend to its heavily bleeding wound.
What manner of devil is this creature, Hall?
Abel yelled at the researcher over his earpiece, hacking branches out of his path with his sword as he followed the trail of luminous green left by the wounded hunter. It's a warrior from another world, Hall replied. A hunter that tracks its prey by their body heat. Considers itself honorable, but often likes to go after more dangerous targets to challenge itself. Not unlike you, Abel.
I am nothing like this demon,
the barbarian shouted in fury.
This gutless monster has no honor. If it did, it would not give itself such an unfair advantage, nor would it run away when wounded. A true warrior would be happy to die a warrior's death in single combat, and would not rely on all its fancy weaponry.
Well, from what we can tell, these things have their own codes of sorts, DeLagirio's voice said over the comms. You might not think of this hunter as honorable, but it definitely thinks of itself that way. Maybe use that to your advantage?
I do not need to be lectured by the likes of you,
Abel interrupted.
You have not known the heat of battle. None of you at the Foundation have. I will follow the trail of this cowardly beast's blood and cleave its foul head from its shoulders.
Unbeknownst to Abel, high above a branch, the predator was watching him. Its biomask had been zoomed in on him, the hunter listening to the barbarian's outrage. It turned to the task at hand, opening up its medikit and producing the surgical tools within as it tended to the deep green cut across its chest. Stifling roars of pain beneath its mask, the predator stapled the injury closed and applied a solvent to cauterize it. Night was beginning to fall, and Abel had long since lost the trail of green blood. Frustrated, he thought back to what the puny researchers at the Foundation had told him of his alien adversary. If it believed itself to be honorable, to have a code, then perhaps using that to lure it out to face him might work. With the sun rapidly disappearing beyond the tree line, Abel gathered a number of branches, hacking them off trees with his sword and fashioning them into burning torches. he placed them in a circle around the circumference of a clearing, creating a makeshift gladiatorial arena. He could feel his blood boiling, the urge to defeat this monster making him seethe. Throwing his head back and beating a fist against his chest, Abel roared up at the dark sky.
"Come out, Hunter!"
he howled.
"Show yourself! Come on, do it! I'm right here."
Watching him from afar, hidden by its cloak, the predator recognized what was happening. This was a challenge, a direct call to engage in single combat. Refusing this challenge and shooting its prey dead would be quicker, easier. But the hunter knew it was being watched, and therefore judged. With a growl, it dropped to the ground and paced towards the circle. Abel turned as the predator revealed itself, appearing almost from thin air. As it did, he drew one of his weapons and stood ready to fight. The hunter shrugged off the technology it carried on its back, dropping the plasma caster and its medikit before reaching up and pulling off its mask. Its face was grotesque. 4 hooked mandibles surrounding its mouth flared in anger.
"You are one ugly,"
Abel said, only to be interrupted by the predator extending the blades from its gauntlet and letting out another bestial roar. Holding his sword aloft, Abel gave a goading beckon to his opponent as the pair of them circled one another. Finally, the creature gave in and lunged at him, swiping its pair of razor-sharp serrated blades at Abel. He swung his sword and at the last second, deflected the oncoming blow with a clang of metal. Reaching into his pocket dimension, Abel pulled a second weapon out in his other hand and swiped at the predator, slicing through the creature's hide and leaving another gaping wound at its thigh. Roaring in fury, the predator launched another strike. Abel blocked the attack yet again, this time by crossing his swords, but the predator barged forward, driving its blades into the prey's chest and pinning his 2 weapons against him. The monstrous alien viciously headbutted Abel, the hooks of its mandibles scratching his face as it did, before reaching up to the back of his neck with its free hand. Abel could feel the sheer strength of the hunter lifting him off his feet, ready to twist his neck and pull his head off to claim it as a trophy. Kicking the predator in the chest, Abel used the force of the impact to push himself free from the creature's grip, backflipping through the air and landing a few feet away. His swords clattered together as they dropped to the ground, the immortal barbarian summoning another and immediately charging at the predator. It had been winded by the kick and barely recovered in time to defend itself as the blade swung for its neck. The predator staggered back, green blood oozing from its hide and pouring from its mouth. That blow had mortally wounded it. It was bleeding heavily and knew it might not survive this hunt, but it refused to be bested by a human, even one as seemingly invulnerable as Abel. Hunching over, listening to him slowly approaching to deliver the killing blow, the predator tapped a series of controls on its gauntlet. A gradually accelerating beeping began emanating from the device. Turning around at the last second, the alien hunter impaled Abel before he was upon it, skewering SCP-076-2 on its wrist blades. His sword had been raised above his head to plunge through the creature, and even while impaled, Abel was able to deliver the final blow. Stabbing the predator while it too had stabbed him, the pair were locked in a stalemate, angrily roaring each other until an explosion of energy burst from the hunter's gauntlets, reducing both Abel and the predator to atoms. Watching from their satellite feed, Hal and Diligirio sighed. They wouldn't have their specimen for testing, but at least they knew that Abel would eventually resurrect within the stone cube of SCP-076-1. But even higher up than their satellite, someone else was watching. A group of predators growled and chittered amongst themselves, having witnessed from their ship as one of their own had died in a battle with Abel. Although there was no way of knowing, the noises the hunting party were making could have been expressions of disappointment at their fallen brother or a declaration of war. Now for another murderous matchup between one of the Foundation's most infamous anomalies and another science fiction legend. Go and check out Boba Fett vs. SCP-610, The Flesh That Hates, and afterwards witness a battle between 2 brothers in SCP-073 and SCP-076 Cain vs. Abel.